What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Drive for Show DFS for Dough here on Rotogrinders. Justin Van Zuiden with you here, and I will be hosting the show as we talk another week of golf this week for you. The Travelers Championship coming at us this week, and there's always a little bit of a hangover effect the week after a major, but we'll try to dust that off and provide some good insight for this week's tournament. And I've got my two usual co-hosts here to do it. We'll take a quick look back at the U.S. Open for last week and see how things went for that. And I'll bring in Tambo, who had a very good shot going into Sunday afternoon to take down the $100 entry Millie Maker contest on DraftKings. And pretty much everything went wrong for him in about the last 35 holes or so of his golfers playing for the week. So Tambo, another close call for you. Sorry about the way it turned out, but was still a nice sweat for you in the end there.
Yeah, that's a good friend said. You got to be close to close. So it's how it goes, right? You put yourself there, hope for the opportunity, and so many close calls now in these Millie Makers. I was 23rd in that, 31st in the $10 with a different lineup. So it was two different shots there that neither went my way, but it could have been worse, right? It could have been a lot worse. Bryson wasn't even in those lineups, and somehow, so I blew up, but you said you'd make this part quick. So I'm happy to move past this here and move on to the next one. Ask Noto how he did last week.
Yeah, my lineups were dead on arrival. Thursday afternoon, I was winning $0, and that never moved the rest of the week. It never at any point in time was I winning more than $0 after Thursday afternoon. I only did 6 lineups, and they were all garbage. So I have not had the best luck in the U.S. Open, and was thankful that I did not put a large chunk of bankroll on the line, because my teams were quite possibly the worst I've created. I'm sure there's been a week where they were a little worse, but those were abysmal. So no sweats for me. Noto, anything better for you? Better than 0?
I mean, yeah, better than 0. Main lineup ended up cashing even with Finau. I don't know what happened to him, but yeah, I was pulling for Tambo, sent out my tweet using my one time on him. I think you only get one per year, and I'm pretty sure I jinxed him. His team just fell apart after that, and U.S. Open is like the only event where having more player holes remaining actually can be a negative, especially with how tough the back nine was playing. But my week could have been a whole lot better if Louis could have held on. I had a pretty big outright on him at 50-1. So that one's still burning a little bit. But overall, I mean, awesome U.S. Open. At one point, I think all 5 of the top golfers in the world were in the top 10 or within one stroke of the lead. And then at the end, it was a 2-man race. I was kind of surprised how many people just fell off.
Yeah, and easy to do with how difficult some of those back 9 holes were playing, and gutted for Louis after the, what's that, 6 runner-up finishes now?
Yes, sir.
And everybody else ever that has 6 runner-up finishes in majors has at least 2 wins, and he doesn't have any. So it's
he's got one.
He's got an open. I was just gonna say, wait for the chalk to pile on here in a minute, because there's an open coming up, and he's going to be the favorite. So,
yes, has one. Everyone else that has at least 6 runner-ups has at least 2. So he's the only one that doesn't have 2. My bad there. I'm not trying to shortchange him on it, but it was just it wasn't really like he lost the tournament. I mean, yeah, he made some kind of poor shots coming down the stretch there, but Rahm 2 huge putts. To close it out, and ended up getting some redemption for having to withdraw with that 6-stroke lead a few weeks back. So was a fun finish. Too bad that didn't work out for Tambo there in the Millie Maker, but it brings a new week. Tambo says he's ready to move on. Noto, any other thoughts for the tournament for you?
Just a couple more. I mean, I think Rahm was all class the way he handled the thing at the Memorial, and his post-round interview after he won the U.S. Open, just all class too. Same for Louis. I mean, nobody takes an L like Louis Oosthuizen. I really feel for the guy. I mean, I know he's a millionaire and making all this money on tour, and doesn't have a whole lot of worries, other than his farm. But I do feel for Louis a little bit. I didn't love Bryson, hitting it into the crowd on purpose. I don't know if you guys caught that.
Yeah.
He was aiming 30 yards right on that one hole, and he would pick up his tee the second it left the club, knowing it was going 300 yards right into a crowd of people. Didn't yell for or anything. I didn't love that, but and I don't agree with everyone, ripping on Torrey Pines. I thought it produced one of the better leaderboards we've seen in a long time. So it's hard to rip it for that. And then the final note I had was there ever an easier fade in showdown than Hughes and Henley on Sunday?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Henley and Hughes both. I said the same thing on the video. Like I just couldn't. If they do it. I said, but like that was part of it. The Bryson thing was definitely interesting. It was almost as if he didn't think that people were smart enough to know that that is what he was doing. So he kind of wanted it just to look like, oh, whoops, it went over there. But you still got to yell for, man. Like let the people know.
He even
especially
said he was doing it on purpose.
Yeah, that's what I mean. But at first, I think what people were thinking is like, oh, we're not going to catch on. And then he said that he was doing it. So he's got to say four at that point. I know a lot of people brought that up online as well. And then the other guy I was going to bring up, though, I said didn't want to talk about this anymore. I'm done with my lineup talk. But Rory, man, I thought he could have had that thing like 2 or 3 times. He just couldn't make a putt down the stretch. He was in it. He had eagle opportunities. He was in the fairway twice on the big par fives and gave himself chances there. And he just didn't happen. And so I don't know. I thought that was kind of crazy too, considering 9,900. We liked him, Noto. When we talked on the Wednesday show, he was getting overlooked. There was a good spot to play him there. The Father's Day narrative of him versus Rahm, it could have come all down to that in the end. So and it just didn't quite get there. But another, just decent showing for him. So we'll see what happens at the Open with him as well. And then Louis, the LB on 17 sucked, but man, he did play some really good golf again.
Yeah.
And people have caught on now. I know he had high ownership. A lot of the guys at the top had pretty high ownership, but Louis is just so good in these majors. It's ridiculous. Like 8,100 is just nuts for the price tag for him. It'll be interesting to see what they do with them for price tag as far as the Open is concerned. I saw they just copy and pasted the 3 same milli makers over, the $10, the $100, and the 44.44. But pricing, we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, for Rory, I mean, he didn't catch the break that Rahm and Louis both caught. We saw Rahm, he hit it over the fence on number 9. I don't know if you guys caught that. He thought it was out of bounds. He was about ready to re-tee, and they're like, no, it's not out of bounds. Got to drop on the other side. And then Louis on the par 5, that ball could have rolled all the way back, 50 yards on number 13. And then Rory, his approach, I don't know, 15 or something like that. It ended up, being a fried egg in the downslope of the bunker, and ended up doubling. I think he hoselled it, and then Bryson kind of did the same thing. But yeah, I mean, golf, man, it's a game of slim margins. Rahm beat Louis by 1 stroke over 4 days, and catch those breaks, and that's all it takes.
Yeah, it's funny how the game works sometimes, and how things can change so quickly. And we saw that with the leaderboard throughout the weekend. So it was a fun event, but we turn the page, we move forward, we look to the Travelers Championship this week. TPC River Highlands, the host course for this event, and this one's been around for a while, so plenty of data to go back on and analyze, and pretty strong field, relatively speaking, for the week after a major. A little bit stronger than what you would expect. Last year, all the top golfers were playing a little extra golf, just coming back from the COVID break, so it wasn't surprising to see a strong field last year, but this year, a little bit more firepower in this event than I would have generally expected. So, Noto, what can you tell us about the course this week?
Yeah, as for the field, I think Pat Mayo made a good point on his podcast that most of the guys aren't going to be playing in Detroit next week or at John Deere the next week, so they want to get one more start in before the Open Championship in 3 weeks or whatever it is. So yeah, that'll be cool. I can't wait for that. As for TPC River Highlands, one of the shorter courses that you'll see on the PGA Tour, only 6,800 yards. Par 70, the par 5s, there's 2 of them. You can reach them with a good drive, even, not a great drive, you could reach one of them. There's a par 4 that is drivable, number 15, I believe. And there's not really a strong course fit, I would say. It is a Pga design, so you can't really overpower it off the tee, but we've seen a mix of bombers do well here. DJ won here last year. Bryson has a really good track record here. Guys with short games have really good track record here. So it's just one of those courses where you don't have to be long off the tee. You want to gain strokes with your irons, especially your shorter irons. Going to be a lot of wedges hit this week. The greens are very small, but they're still easy to hit. So I'm not looking at around the green all that much this week. I think if you're having to put yourself in a spot where you're scrambling, you probably aren't going to be in contention anyway. The greens themselves are a mix of Poanua and a bent grass. So if you want to look at those splits, I don't mind it. And yeah, I mean, it's a fun course. This is one of my favorite non-major events of the year because there's a lot of risk reward holes, and the finishing stretch is really fun to watch.
Yeah, it should be a fun tournament for sure. With a lot of movement, like you kind of alluded to there. A course where you can score and you can also get into some trouble. So will be a pretty interesting risk reward on a lot of golfers this week. We'll make it a fun build for tournaments. Tambo, your thoughts on the venue this week?
Yeah, I think that mainly just the field is a little bit stronger than what I would normally see, or what we'd normally see. I think in general, it's a good course. We know it, like Noto said, there's good course history here. You can go off some of that. There's definitely scoring available out there. I believe it was a 58 that Jim Furyk put up here, so we can see that. Streelman, we'll talk about him at 9,400 in a bit here. I saw it mentioned in the chat. I believe it was like 7 of his last 9 holes to get the job done here, or maybe he lost. I can't remember if he lost in a playoff or whatever it was, but I think it was to DJ actually. But the guys at the top are all playing pretty good. So DJ, Koepka, Cantlay, Reed, Casey, Scheffler, all these guys have been playing really good golf, and beyond that too. But that's kind of the thing for me coming in. I'm going to be looking at that. And then the thing about Bryson is not like he hasn't been playing good. He's been playing good, just not maybe as good as the others, but he also has the best, one of the better histories here. You can say DJ won it last time out, but Bryson's got a really good history here. So really hard to differentiate at the top. And there is just a bunch of guys in the 7 and 6K range that you're really going to have to just pick and choose. It's pretty crazy. So we'll be interested to see where you guys are at in the 6K range, especially this week down there.
All right. We will certainly get there, and we will play our Guess the Golfer game for a free week of Rotogrinders premium access. Stay tuned for that. We'll do that a little bit later on. And we can just go ahead and start digging in here. I mentioned we've got a little bit more firepower at the top than we normally would the week after a major. We've got DJ, we've got Bryson, we've got Koepka in the field. That's a little bit surprising to see him playing, I believe, 3 weeks in a row now, despite the injuries that he's been through. The viral post from last week about him, trying to navigate his way up the stairs there. We got Cantlay and Reed in the 5-figure salary range on DK as well. So the usual around 5 golfers there with those 5-figure price tags. So Noto, what do you think about these golfers at the top if we need to prioritize any of them this week?
Single entry, I don't think you need to. I think a lot of people are going to start with Paul Casey. I think that's going to be my plan as well. It's hard not to like him, but we'll cover him in a minute. As far as MME, I think I'll probably get a little bit of all of these guys. Dustin Johnson obviously won here last year. It was his first time playing it in at least 5 years. I didn't look back past that, but loves speed dive courses, back-to-back top 20s. The ball striking is looking pretty good. Bryson, everyone talks about his wedges being bad, but they've actually improved a lot over the last couple months. His proximity numbers aren't nearly as bad as they were over the last 6 months or so. He's got a really good track record here. Don't think I'll have a ton of Brooks. I don't know. Low on Brooks is always enticing, but I just never seem to get it to a ton of them in non-majors. I know that's kind of a bad approach to take, and it certainly wouldn't surprise me to see him come out and win, but just doesn't seem like he gets up for these type of events. Cantlay, another guy that's really good on Pete Dye courses. And then Patrick Reed, his last 16 events, he's either been top 25 or miscut. So ton of upside. A guy that very good short game. The ball striking can be hit or miss. People hate to play him. So I think he's certainly interesting. That 10,000 price tag, I think it's just going to be a psychological thing where it just seems, $100 too expensive, and that'll lead to lower ownership.
Yeah, I had a pretty good Sunday at the U.S. Open if you want to ride that hot Sunday round. So that's last week I said I was on Reed a little bit. He didn't burn me for what seemed like the first time ever. The problem is it came on the aforementioned week where all my lineups were dead Thursday afternoon anyway. So it didn't really matter, but that's all right. I won't hold that against him. At least he did something there last week. So Tambo, your thoughts on the top 5 here?
But do you want to ride the Reed Hot Sunday into this tournament, Justin?
Sure, why not?
Okay, I have to ask, right? And I don't know. I actually wasn't feeling Reed coming into this one. That's why I was kind of curious just to double down there. But I do like another guy that you like, and he's tagged up there for you and starting near the bottom. I guess if Bryson and Cantlay are both going to be the same ownership, and I'm just picking one, I definitely like Cantlay. I think the Memorial win is something that, just happened. He played well at the US Open. He's always good on Pga tracks. While Bryson's like 8th, 9th, and 8th tier, Cantlay is like 11th, 15th, and 15th right behind him at the exact same tournament they played in. So I think they're both pretty similar, and he's much cheaper, $700 less. It's not a 4 par 5s type of course or anything like that. So I do think that matters some. And then the other, if I'm going up there, that's why I said this, that, that's for the ownership perspective, but I like DJ more than Brooks if you're talking, and that costs the same money more, 700, but for the not just the price, the ownership there is still, they're both like 10% as of right now. And I think DJ could pick up steam, but I do like what Noto had hinted at earlier, which Mayo had actually mentioned, like he said, where, they're coming here, they're not going anywhere else after this. Like, they're coming in to try and win this thing, and all of them are trying to win it. But I'm just saying who could actually do it. And I think it's DJ. And if you look at in the past, I mean, he's obviously the defending champion right now, but at the same time, he's played pretty well in the past at PGA courses himself. It's some of them he's fell off at RBC Heritage. He's had some bad Sundays and things like that, but he's definitely capable. He's, riding some form. I don't know people watching as much because he kind of wasn't in the mix at the US Open, but he was just back a little bit further, and there was mayhem going down, and basically he kind of stayed the course and just didn't do anything special to go off and get up in the mix. But before that, the week before, he had turned it on a little bit as well. So I do like DJ and Cantlay at the top for right now. Those two are my two favorites.
All right. Yeah, with you on Cantlay there. I think that if you're looking for safety, upside, look, he had that really bad stretch in the spring, but still like second in this field in tee to green over the last 50 rounds. He's clearly put that behind him. Some solid finishes here over the last month or two. So I am with you on Cantlay. Hard to fault any of these guys, but the week after a major and dealing with lingering injuries, I just can't trust Koepka this week. So I'm out on him. Don't have a problem getting some exposure to the other four. And part of the reason for that I think Reed is interesting is Noto mentioned the mental angle of people not wanting to, they see 10K and it's a mental block. It's an interesting pivot off of Casey, who's going to have probably more than double the ownership this week. Not that I don't like Casey, but if you're looking to do something a little different in tournaments, obviously we know that Reed is, just as capable of winning the event, if not more capable. So I don't mind that pivot in GPPs. Heading into the top of the 9K range, the guy that maybe hasn't gotten the attention that you would think he would, given the way he's played this year with his upside, is Scheffler. So I like him at 9,600. And then the rest of this range, you got Streelman, Matthew Wolff. All of a sudden, his price all the way back up to 9,300 after, taking some time off. Mentioned that he was dealing with some, mental issues, wanted to clear the slate a little bit, and even got out to an early lead there at the U.S. Open. So that was nice to see. But him being more expensive than Finau and Answer and Neiman feels a little strange at this point. So hard to make a case for Wolff, at least for me this week. But Tambo, I'll go to you first on this group. Where are you looking at the 9Ks, and where do you stand on Chalk Casey?
It's hard to look away from Casey and Answer, even though they're going to be extremely high owned. So that's something I'll have to think about a little bit more. I said to you guys off air before we hopped on, like $9,900 Chalk Casey, what could go wrong, right? That's sort of where I feel about that. And there is other plays, like you said, that would be a good case for Reed and going up above, getting a completely different build, maybe skipping the 9K range. Something cards you and I will look at tomorrow night on the Lineup HQ show as, just an easy fix where you could do that and get off from there. Scheffler seems to have picked up a little steam. Obviously, he's got some good results coming in. Another solid major outing, the T7 at the US Open, definitely helps this causes there. So I get that, but I like Streelman. I know that he's getting some talk, but I feel like almost like he's the guy, almost like a Reed, where I always call it paying up for probability. I think with Scheffler, Casey, Answer, Neiman, and I'll talk about Finau in a second, all being around him, he just can't get all that ownership that you're kind of thinking of. And people do see 9,400 as a bit of a high price tag for Streelman, who you're used to seeing in the high 7s, maybe the low 8s. And he has been playing some really good golf. So I definitely like Streelman. I think he's a good play in there. And then I'm in on Finau. I know Answer and Neiman are popular. I could get behind them, but the thing about Finau is I like the bounce back spot. I don't know, like Noto said at the top, what happened at that US Open. I thought, you got Rahm winning it himself, had a pretty good Torrey Pines history, But then some of the other guys, like Bubba was there for a minute now. Leishman didn't show up. Reed didn't have the best week. He had an okay week. And then Finau obviously didn't have a week at all. So that's the unfortunate part there. But just to bounce back here, even with course history aside, because he doesn't have a great one here, I just think his stats are basically DJ stats for $9,200 in this field. If he just shows up and we play, if you just played Finau at 32% ownership and some of the higher dollar single entry stuff, you got to get back in here at 12 to 13%. Noto and I have said that plenty of times in the past, and I'm sticking with it here. So I think Finau is a great play at 9,200 down here in this 9K range. Neiman and Answer, to me, they're very similar. Guys that are great names that have upside. Answer, I think, actually has more upside. Neiman hasn't really shown it since those top twos at the start of the season, but both of them, with the Answer being so high owned, Neiman's good. I think Neiman's a good play there as well at 91, or sorry, right at 9,000. So Neiman, Finau, Streelman, and then Casey, I'll figure out what I'm going to do with. I am going to play him, but it might be hard to get to the current ownership level that he's showing up at as of right now.
Yeah, I kind of agree with your takes there. We're pretty much in lockstep. Scheffler, Finau, Answer, probably the favorite three for me. Noto, where are you looking in here?
Yeah, 100% agree on Tony Finau. Pretty much everyone in this range is $1,500 to $2,000 more expensive than they were last week. Finau is $300 more expensive than he was last week, and he's going to be, 1/3 of the ownership in some of the higher dollar stuff. So glad to hop back on him. I know he's missed a cut here on back-to-back trips, but he had really good course history before that. I think he had 3 top 25s. So I'm back in on Finau. I will eat the Casey chalk. I just like playing the good plays up here. He's gained more strokes than anyone since the start of the year per round in this field. It hasn't even been close, really. The ball striking's been awesome, +7, +10, +9 the last 3. He's got 4 top 5 finishes here. So there's a reason why a lot of people are going to be on Casey this week. Don't know what to do with Streelman. He feels like a really good DFS play and a bad bet at that number. But yeah, he does feel expensive, kind of like Reed, like you mentioned. So yeah, I like Streelman a little bit. Going to be off of Wolf. I'm cheering for him. Him coming out and being so honest about his struggles, I think is really cool. And I really want to see him back on top. I think next week, if he plays next week, we know he likes that golf course where you can just bomb it out there in Detroit. So I'll save him for next week. Like Answer, he did miss a cut, but he gained 5 strokes on approach, 9 straight top 30s before that. And then you guys mentioned Neiman just being safe. I mean, he's made 19 to 20 cuts, something like that. So this is a very strong range. This is kind of why I like skipping over the 10s for single entry, because you can start with 2 or 3 of these guys without dipping into the 6Ks.
All right. Yeah, good points there. And you can definitely start your lineups with multiple players from this range for sure. So we dig into the 8K range. It's the data tells me it's a Bubba track. He's won here not once, not twice, but 3 times. So Noto says you play Bubba on the Bubba tracks. I'm going to follow that adage this week, even though he doesn't have the safety that he never used to be the safest DFS play, but a little more volatile now. I'll still play him on the tracks where he has a history of success. So I don't mind some Bubba at 8,900 leading off that range there. So Noto, I'll stick with you. Your thoughts on the 8Ks.
Yeah, I think people will see his T50 after where he was after Friday at the U.S. Open. I think it's a bad thing, but that's one of his better finishes at the U.S. Open. He's just one of those guys that mentally checks out at those type of courses. So don't mind going back to him. You mentioned always play him on Bubba tracks. We've learned that over the years. His outright in some places was like 60 to 1. I don't know if you can still get that number, but seems really good for this course. You mentioned he's won here 3 times. I'm going to play Brian Harman. There's no way he's going to be 24%.
Boy, I looked at that number and I had to do a double take. If Harman's, no offense, Noto, but if Brian Harman is going to be the most popular golfer in the field, I'm not going to play. I can't play him at that. I mean, that shocks me. Tambo, your thoughts on, is he going to be that chalky?
I think he is. I do. Maybe I'm on. Okay. Let's say, I don't think 24, like Noto just said, but he definitely is going to hover like 20 to, I think he's in that range, man. People just know this now. It's kind of like Louis last week where people have just caught on. Like, I'll just play the safe guy. And that's what I was going to allude to if you came to me first there, Cards, when you said Bubba, not always the safest. And then, people see the T50 to Noto's point, maybe get off from there, but the safety play is Noto's guy right below. And I can't fault you for it. I just said, I mentioned to you guys earlier, like Palmetto Championship is totally different, but it was Luke List, Varner, and Vincent Whaley. Different class of guys, but you basically just looked at the board and knew that chalk was going to be bad. You and I can't remember, I think cards you were on that week, and I said I'll wager that 2 out of 3 missed the cut. And again, these are much better players. I'm talking about Casey, Harman, Answer. We'll get to Grillo later. I'm just telling you, like, you put that lineup together and you think that thing's coming through. I don't know how I know or why I know, but I'm just telling you, I can't see a world where that comes through. The US Open, the majors, chalk, a little bit different story. It's a type of course, type of setup where only certain guys can get there. Harman, with all these other plays around him, does worry me a little bit. For as much as I agree with the safety of him, Cam Smith, Hoffman, Si Woo, some of these guys, you're going to have to take some scarier plays on, but the upside is definitely there for some of the guys around him. And that's where I could make the case.
Yeah, I mean, and Harman has shown some upside. I mean, there's no doubt. But if he's going to be on a quarter of rosters, I'll just take my chances with some of the others around him at a quarter of the 25%. I mean, that's nothing against Harman, but I would have pegged him at 12 or 14, or, if he's getting that much buzz, I don't think I can do it this week.
Yeah, I was about to go in my Harman spiel, and then that red number, 24%, just jumped out of me in my spreadsheet. So, yeah, I hope it comes down a little bit. I just checked another site, and they have him as like the 8th highest owned right now. So, if that's the case, I'll play him. But yeah, if he's 25%, that's going to be a tough ask.
All right, Tambo, I'll throw it back to you. Any other thoughts above the 8Ks here before we move along?
Yeah, I think for sure. I like the Bubba call, like you mentioned. I just talked about Cam Smith. I think just an all-around game that just gets overlooked quite often. Again, too, also, I'm pulling it up here now just to look at a couple things right quick. And looking at course history, like I mentioned with Finau, like Cam Smith doesn't have good one. Other guys in here, Harris English doesn't have a good one. I think he's actually showing ownership based on last week. So it's not really just about that for me. I'm never a course history buff or anything that I care about that. I'm just going to play the guys I want to play. Like, how is Henley 8,300 at 8% and English is 8,200 at 20, almost 24% himself? And they could have flip-flopped on Sunday. They just didn't. Henley went backwards, English went forward. So not a huge endorsement for Henley, just to say some of these ownerships, and we saw it on Scheffler up above, and just all these guys, just all very based off of last week, when realistically last week isn't even the course for everybody. It's, different strokes for different folks type of thing, where that course is so tough and so long and everything that goes with it that I don't see it lining up. I like a Hoffman bounce back here. Disappointed some last week. I believe he was 7,200, extremely high owned, and only put up like 45 or 44 DK points or something. So I think he could bounce back really good on par fours. There's a lot of those here. Siwoo Kim at Pete Dye, boom or bust, but I'll definitely take some shots on him. And then the only other guy is a guy that I played last week and definitely burned me, but I still stick with it. And he actually now is in a field that's much weaker than last week and only got a $600 price bump. And that's Adam Scott right at 8,000. Wasn't great, wasn't horrible, but at 8,000, he doesn't have to go out and win this thing for me at that price point. And there's not a lot else I like in there, to be honest.
All right. And as to English, he gained almost 4 strokes putting on Sunday.
Yeah.
And the rest of the numbers for that round were relatively pedestrian, obviously in comparison. So not that we're dismissing a 3rd place finish at a US Open and a 3-under round on Sunday. After all, I am the on the record guy as loving those hot Sunday rounds, but when almost all of it is the putter, at least puts that in perspective a little bit. So Harman and English getting the ownership there. I do think I'm kind of in agreement that I think that will spread out maybe a little bit. Certainly those two will be the highest of that range, but maybe not to the extremes, or at least it would surprise me if it's to the extremes that we have right now. So Noto, other thoughts on the 8Ks from you before we move on?
Tambo mentioned Pete Dye courses. You always got to play Siwoo Kim, so I'll go there. He also likes Poa and Ben Greens. Tee to Green game's been looking good his last 2 events too, so I like him. Hoffman struggling a little bit the last couple of events, but the irons have been good for 3 months now. He's 7 of 8 here with 3 top 10, so I'll go to him. And then 2 of my biggest letdowns last week, Adam Scott, Justin Rose. I mean, Adam Scott was fine, but he told us he was striping it, and then came out and lost strokes ball striking. It was all short game again. For whatever reason, he's turned into like Brian Harman out there. Which is weird, except Harman has more upside than Scott at this point. And then Rose, I mean, he was like 100 over par. I couldn't believe it. I never play the guy. He always gains 18 strokes putting. And then I play him, and that happens. So I don't think I'm going to be on him this week, but I had to bring that up because I'm still tilting those two.
Yeah, Rose is the worst for that, by the way. Like, that's why I never play him, because I can't get him right. And when he goes off, it's always like 5 strokes putting on a first round of the Masters. And you're like, oh, here we go. And then he just slowly tails off. So I don't feel like that. And then, yeah, Adam Scott, seemingly, like I said, has no more ceiling. His ceiling is like Brian. But there you go. No, that could be your Brian. He's $800 less. He's way less owned. And maybe he gets you Brian Harman's numbers and differentiates you there with that $800 savings.
I think Brian Harman might be longer off the tee these days.
Oh boy, interesting stuff for sure. And this is, where the field does start to dip off a little bit. There will be some names in the 7K range that, if we back the bus up 3 years here, or 2 years, Molinari 7,700 and Jason Day 7,500, and heaven only knows where Ricky Fowler is. We haven't gotten there yet, but those guys will get some buzz just because of the name value and the salary. But there are some names, interesting names here. Higo coming off the win a couple weeks ago, had some ownership last week. Wasn't a great spot to use him. I think we talked about that. All three of us were kind of in agreement last week on this show that it wasn't a smart spot to play him. So we're kind of 2 for 2 pegging him here. So maybe this is a spot to hop back aboard the Higo bandwagon. Keegan looks like he's going to carry some ownership this week. I see our boy TJ has tagged up Cameron Tringali as a value play, despite the $7,600 price tag, $100 over the threshold once again, that he makes an exception for with his boy Tringali. Give him a hard time about that all the time. But nonetheless, he's been playing pretty good golf this year. So there are some names in here that you can look to, but it seems like Keegan Bradley is the one that's going to garner the most ownership come Thursday morning. Tambo, I'll let you have first crack at this range. What are you looking at in here?
It's probably bad, but it feels, like I said, I don't feel great about the chalk up above. So we're not quite down. This isn't like a 6K scrub or something that we're, chalking up here as it's going to be a bad play. I'd rather play the Keegan Bradley chalk than some of the chalk above. I feel like he's the one that is a little bit mispriced for how good he's played. I know there's the hometown connection and the Connecticut kid. You can make up a story about that, whether that's going to hurt him or help him. I care not to do either and just say I like him for his price. And I think it's a fair price, and 16% is definitely workable. You can still do things around that, but I actually like a lot of guys in this range, and I don't love the 6K range, no coincidence, but that are all mostly lower owned. Like, I really like Max Homa. Doesn't have a great history here, doesn't have anything. I just think upside and firepower at 7.8K. This is a field he'd look to feast on. He's done it through, over the years. Some of the guys I'm liking here actually line up with a little bit of a Genesis correlation. He's the Genesis champion. I talked about Finau earlier. That was the playoff earlier this season that they had. I mentioned Adam Scott, previous year Genesis. I don't know, that one, for whatever reason, Riviera just lines up in my mind a little bit with this one. I like Sam Burns, under 10% now, down at 7.7K. TJ breaking all the rules you mentioned, but I definitely agree with him there. He's just over 10% showing. I don't really care too much anyway about these guys. No one's really that heavily owned. Doc Redman, I'm good with. Kevin Na just pops. Kenny and I talked about this on the podcast this week, where I think it's like 4 wins in his last 43 events or something. So he's winning almost 10% of the time. This to me would be more of a track for him. Just rattle off some more names. Lanto, Poulter, Sink, and then we'll get to maybe some others. Fowler, though, Nappy Factor, announced #GirlDad. So he's definitely coming back. But I'll tell you one thing about Fowler before I kick it back is that the books got news of that and actually increased his number to take more money in on Ricky because they know he's not winning. So I will say that much about Ricky Fowler. But yeah, Grillo is going to get talked up. I'll leave it to you guys to go ahead there, but that's just some of the names I like.
Yeah, Grillo getting some buzz as well. Feels, as long as the ball striking remains, it's all about the putter for him. But surprises me that he is as affordable as he is this week. Let's see. He is, 7,300 right down there with Ricky. So, Noto, your thoughts on this range?
Yeah, I'll bet money that Grillo ends up being higher on than Harman this week. I think everybody's going to play Grillo. And it's hard not to, he's a good iron player. He's actually gaining strokes putting in 4 of his last 6. I like him too. He does feel too cheap. Like you mentioned, Justin, moving back up, Keegan, home game, for all the reasons we mentioned, good ball striker. I kind of like the shorter ball strikers this week, just guys that give themselves a lot of birdie opportunities. Don't have to worry about the scrambling as much this week. I like the Homa call. Sam Burns, he's just one of those guys, extreme range of outcomes. He has a bunch of top tens and a bunch of missed cuts. I like those guys in MME. Tringali, I play him every week, but I am a little bit worried about him. He's lost strokes off the tee in 4 straight. He's lost strokes, I think, around the green in 3 straight. The course history, it hasn't been good pretty much anywhere because he's a much different golfer now. But last 4 finishes here, miscut, 271, 269, miscut. So if you're looking for a reason to get off of Tringali, there are at least some red flags. I have a Jason Day problem, so I'll probably play some of him. And yeah, that's it for me.
At least that's the first step in getting over the problem. At least you're readily admitting that that's okay. So
it just keeps getting worse, though. It's like I'm doubling down until it finally works.
You got the itch. I know a lot of you will watch this on playback, but we do have some folks watching us live. It's been an interesting half an hour or so while we've been on the air. If you are intently watching us, but still want to keep up with other sports news, the Pistons have won the NBA draft lottery. So that will be interesting to see how they manage to screw that up. And and Max Scherzer has gotten searched for sticky stuff 3 times in 3 innings, and he just basically went berserk the 3rd time and stripped off all of his stuff and on the mound and was having a nice little fit about it. So yeah, that's going to be interesting to see where MLB goes with all of this stuff. But that's all been going on while we're on the air. So interesting sports night. We get a lot of stuff to compete with here. But hopefully we can deliver the golf winners. And before we get to the 6K range, probably a good time to mention our Guess the Golfer contest. We'll let some of you people start throwing guesses in the chat if you are watching us live in the YouTube chat. Check us out, Rotogrinders YouTube channel. Leave us a thumbs up or subscribe if you haven't already. We appreciate that. And you can get yourself Rotogrinders Premium flexible offerings if you choose to sign up. You can choose your own sports as part of a combo package, or you can do a single sport premium and pick the sport that you wish. So obviously, if you're watching the golf show and you just want to pay for golf premium, you can do that as well. Or you can win our Guess the Golfer contest and get a free week to try it out first. You can use the promo link. We'll have our producer Devin throw that in the YouTube chat, and that's good for $10 off your first month if you sign up using that link. So check it out and start dropping some guesses in the chat. Our favorite sub $7,000 golfer this week, we've got him projected at under 4% ownership. So really low owned value play this week that probably off the radar a little bit. Probably not one of the first 2 or 3 names that might come to mind, but a nice value play that we were at least able to agree on that we like before the show. And if we get a winner, we'll give away that free week of Rotogrinders Premium. So all right, let's go ahead and wrap up the 7K range before we get into the punt plays. Tambo, I'll throw it back to you. What are you looking at? Anything else in the 7Ks there?
Yeah, a couple more at the bottom I'll get to. I do like, I mentioned Stewie Singh, Chris Kirk. I think I really struggled this week because I also just looked and saw the Kyle Stanley's picking up steam. So like Stanley, Grillo, Answer, Keegan, Casey, Harmon, like that's the build. That's going to be, something I'm really going to be trying to steer away from. I don't love it by any means. So just getting bad vibes with it. So I'm going to move on. But like I said, there's so many other guys. I will play some Fowler. I just think, again, he has been getting better. The one thing that keeps getting brought up, or maybe not enough as far as getting talked about, is that he went back to his old swing, the nice little smooth little flippy swing that he's got there. And I love it. And it's been working a little bit better. So I do like that. I mentioned Kirk, Sink. Guido is kind of interesting. Just maybe I'm just a fan after last week, get it, all those fist pumps. That was pretty incredible. So I like that. ZJ actually has some decent history here. And I always think he's got, at least some safety or some upside, not some upside, so some safety for you at 7,100 to make the cut. And you can go from there. And if he gives you that top 20, top 30, it could be okay. But the other 2 are at the bottom, Ortiz and Munoz, 2 guys that I just always play based on boom or bust. They're almost like how we mentioned with Homa above, or with some of the other guys like Burns, where they either, top 20, top 15, or they just don't show up at all. So I'll mix and match them sparingly. And then I wanted to know, Cards, I'll kick it back to you here for this. The 7K range, man, like Reevy, Stanley, Knox, your boy, Taylor Gooch, Doug Gim, a lot of guys in there that look very, have potential, look like you can play them. So any thoughts on the exact 7K range? I know Luke List bowed out and I left Perez out, but still some other guys there.
Yeah, List has withdrawn. Damon has withdrawn. Eric Van Rooyen, that came out today, he's out. So Stricker was one of the first ones. And for some reason right now, I think the only alert that DraftKings is showing like up on the lineup build screen is that Stricker is out. Don't let that fool you. They got the red out thing next to the other guys that have withdrawn. But just make sure we've got it correct on our Rotogrinders tools now. So if you are a premium subscriber, that should be showing, along with we'll get the new players added that may have just gotten salary tags, Monday qualifiers and such. I've got projections in there for all of them, so those will all be showing correctly once we link all that up. As for the question, the 7K range, exactly. When you factor in ownership, I mean, I got nothing against Stanley. He's going to be probably the most popular of the bunch. I think Reavie, in terms of, the way he played in the US Open qualifier, had a couple decent rounds at the US Open, only 3% owned. I think in GPP builds, he would maybe be my pick there of that group at 7K. Noto, your thoughts on anything else above or at 7,000?
Yeah, if Reavie's ownership holds, he'll be my favorite play of the week at any price point. I'd love him this week. Mentioned played well with the sectional qualifier, gained 10 strokes on approaches his last two events. He won here in 2019. It's kind of like the perfect type of Reavie track. So love that call. Not a whole lot else that I love up here. Not going to be playing Kazire. I think he's an interesting fade. I like the Guido thing. I think he needs T3 or better to secure his temporary membership on tour. So that'd be cool to see. And yeah, Fowler and Still, I like them, but it seems like they're going to be pretty highly owned.
Yeah, just at those, at those salaries with the name recognition, particularly with Ricky, I think people are ready to buy back in. So, all right, let's check here and see. Let's see. We got a couple guesses, but no winners for the Guess the Golfer game yet. So again, under 7K, one of our favorite lower owned values of the week. Do like Reavie. He is not the winner of that contest selection though. All right, Noto, I'll go back to you for some punts. It gets a little rough under 7K this week. Got any diamonds in the rough out there?
So I have two in my player pool at the moment. One is the Guess the Golfer, so I won't say him yet. The other one, Chase Seifert, he gained 8.8 strokes on approach his last three events. He's 2 of 2 here. T9 his last time out. Looks like he's going to be sub 5%, so I like that. And a couple other guys I have is maybes, Seamus Power, 5 straight made cuts, including 3 top 25s. Hank Lebioda, just a guy that always seems to finish T40 or better. He's got some good ball striking numbers. And Patrick Rogers, he's been a little bit better recently. It seems to fall off on the weekend. He's played really well the first couple days at the Palmetto in the US Open, but he's made 5 or 6 cuts here as well. And that's all I have.
All right, Tambo, your thoughts on the punt value range this week?
Yeah, I had Noto's boy in there. I got Patrick Rogers up at the top. I do like him. Going down, though, I really don't love this range. Like Seifert, you can make a case for. Hank Lebioda, those are 2 guys. Tom Hoagie, Hubbard, those are guys that could have upside that you could roll out there and try on. But, the couple guys down at the bottom, I guess Vincent Whaley, and everyone just wanted to play him a couple of weeks ago, and Fields not nearly as strong as this, I should say, but also not like we're not talking major-esque or anything. So I just think that he's fine to hop back on. Could just be a blip on the radar, and he's back to his top 30 self at 6,400, and now no one's really talking about him. So I do like him. And then much like Noto mentioned, I think the Rogers point, what was overlooked was 5 out of 6 made cuts or whatever he's got here. Down at the bottom, Tyler Duncan, 3 made cuts here. I like him. He's always got a little bit of upside. And then Scott Brown, 4 made cuts in a row here at 6,100. Just another guy that most people don't know, don't play. And these 2 guys are just some punts that I'll just take shots with and see what the lineups look like when I plug them in there.
All right. Still no winner on the Guess the Golfer game. So we'll give everybody maybe 2 more minutes, and then we'll have to spill the beans as to our favorite golfer. I believe Noto hinted at it earlier. Next week, the Rocket Mortgage Classic, one of the less popular events on tour. We're gonna make Tambo and Noto, unless they find a special guest, hold down the fort by themselves next week. I'm on vacation, so I will be out next week, first trip in like 2 years with the kids. So say a prayer for me before we venture off for a week, and hope to come back with my sanity intact. But it'll be nice to get away for a week. It's been a while. So I will be gone next week, but Rocket Mortgage Classic, then the John Deere Classic in my neck of the woods, can't be gone that week before the Open Championship. So that's what's coming up the next few weeks. Any other thoughts? And then we'll go ahead and give away the golfer if nobody has guessed it yet. So Noto, anything else for you?
Yeah, any interest in the two newly turned pros, Davis Thompson, John Pack? I mean, I know Thompson was 235 Palmetto. Pack really struggled, but
Pack was 35 over.
That was a weird course. You know, it was the American Links, whatever the course was called. So we know their pedigree is pretty good coming out of college. Any interest in those guys?
I could play Thompson again. I should be more of a John Pack fan. I know Mayo loves him, and they always joke because Mayo and I both have diamond studs, and he's got his diamond studs out on the golf course. But I do think from anybody I've talked to close or knows anything, basically says that obviously both really good talents, but the Davis Thompson out of those two, when it was brought up at the Palmetto, like he's the guy. So I could play some Davis Thompson here. I definitely think it's a spot, and that result just showed he's ready. John Pack could obviously show up at any time, but I think tried that on with Norman Zhang and Panda there, and it did not work out too well. Keep going back to these guys. And like I said, I just don't see it here. All these guys were lobbying for going after. Like I like Gooch, Gim, Knox, and Reevy all at 7,000, even over Stanley, who's the guy most are going to play before I would play most of these 6K guys. So it's really tough to dig into this range when I don't think you really have to that much this week.
Yeah, our guest, the golfer, was David Lipsky as our value play this week. So coming off in 8th place at the Palmetto, made 21 birdies that week, had some solid finishes on the Korn Ferry Tour in recent weeks as well. So they say that when you're playing hot golf, it translates anywhere, and I think he's fine as a punt, given the lack of options down there this week. Don't mind Davis Thompson either. I agree with the guys there. So Tambo, any other thoughts for you before we get out of here this week?
Absolutely not. No, thank you.
All right. We've been through it. Good luck with all your lineups. Noto and Tambo will keep you covered next week. I'll be back in 2 weeks for the John Deere Classic. So thanks as always for checking us out, and be sure to check out Rotogrinders Premium. We think you'll like what we have to offer you. So we'll be back next week. Have a fantastic week, everybody. Good luck in all your contests for the Travelers Championship. Stay safe, enjoy the first full week of summer, and we will catch you later.